Hello, welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here with my buddy Teddy, sitting on the couch, and the National Book Award released its long list for fiction. Usually when I do a reaction to the long list, I'll link my reaction down below, by the way, there is conversation about books that are omitted from the list. The temptation is always to call these snubs, but I think snubs, it's a little aggressive. It implies that something is being deliberately overlooked. So ordinarily when I do my reaction, I quickly mention, like, I'm surprised this book's not here, this book's not here, this book. You just kind of end up listing a couple of books at the end. I thought to myself this year, why not make a special video for you cinnamon buns, talking about them a little bit more in depth and giving them something special, like a little bit more of a focus. So here are the books that I am surprised not to see on the long list for the National Book Award for fiction, or books that I would have liked to see on the list. For me personally, I think the big surprise from the long list for the National Book Award this year is that Audition by Katie Kitamura is not on it. This, maybe they didn't want to have too much crossover with the Booker Prize, and they decided to go with Flashlight by Susan Choi. I don't necessarily think that the National Book Award would be thinking along those lines, but this seemed like a good candidate to make the list. And it feels like Flashlight by Susan Choi got the spot instead. I do feel surprised that it's not there. This feels like the type of thing that the National Book Award would be likely to recognize. And I think this is just the biggest surprise, all in all. And maybe given that it is on the Booker long list, I shouldn't be that surprised. But, Flashlight did make it onto the long list for fiction and Audition didn't. So that, I would say, is the biggest overall surprise when it comes to the long list for the National Book Award for fiction. The next one that I would mention is The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. When On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous came out, it was wildly acclaimed. Lots of people just absolutely loved that book. And it seemed like it was going to be in the mix for best of lists and book prizes come the end of the year. Ultimately, it ended up just completely fading away. It was not on the long list for the National Book Award, the Pulitzer, or anything like that. It didn't appear on the New York Times and a best of list for the end of the year. It just faded away. And I had mentioned in the lead up to the National Book Award long list that if The Emperor of Gladness didn't appear, maybe it would be a bit of an indication that the same fate would be ready to befall this book. And that remains to be seen. We'll be getting best of lists very soon. It's mid-September right now, and best of lists are not that far away. So we'll have to wait and see. I am having sort of diminishing hopes for the Pulitzer for this, but maybe there's a bit of snobbery afoot with Oprah's book club, but it feels a little surprising that Ocean Vuong has had two wildly acclaimed books, especially with audiences and readers who are not, members of the literary elite or critics, and it just hasn't translated into book prizes or best of lists. But best of lists will be coming. So this one, TBD how far it may go other places, but it didn't appear here. And it is quickly building a sense of Ocean Vuong being overlooked for prizes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with his next book if this one ends up going the way of On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Now, this one is very newly released, but given the amount of acclaim that it has gotten, the amount of buzz it had before it was published, I am surprised that Buckeye by Patrick Ryan was not on the list. Maybe this just sort of fell through the cracks of books that hadn't been published yet. And a lot of the books that did make the list have not been published yet. But So maybe, I don't know, it maybe just fell through the cracks. Maybe they really did like those other books that were coming out or already published. But this would have felt like a good fit for the National Book Award. So I'm surprised that it did not make it. Now let's talk about books I'm not surprised not to see on the list, but I think would have deserved a spot on the list, and books that I hope will start appearing in other places. The first one is The Imagined Life by Andrew Porter. I read this book in the first half of 2025, and I just absolutely loved it. I thought it was really fantastic. And I immediately went and purchased another Andrew Porter book because he has become an author that I really need to explore further. And because I love this book so much, I just want other people to discover it. And I want to shout about it from the rooftops. But, I'm only one man with one BookTube channel. It would be nice for some official recognition to come through to help steer people toward this absolutely beautiful, wonderful book. And now that it did not make it to the long list for the National Book Award, hopefully it will surprise and slide into a best of list. It'll certainly be on mine when we get to the end of 2025. So hope springs eternal for good things for The Imagined Life by Andrew Porter. And the same is true of Blackwood's Blue Sky by Eowyn Ivey. When I read this at the beginning of the year, I think what I said at the time was get ready for this book to become my whole personality in 2025. And, it's still in my top 10. And I just want good things for this book, but it does feel like conversation around this died down fairly quickly. And maybe there are people who struggle with elements of the fantastic in this story. The way Eowyn Ivey writes books that blend real world details with fairy tale tropes doesn't play well with everyone, but I think she does it so well, and she writes these absolutely beautiful stories. And I just would have loved to see Blackwood's Blue Sky getting the recognition that I personally think it deserves. So I don't know that it will show up on any best of lists by the end of the year, but I just want more good things for this book. It's truly wonderful, and I would follow Eowyn Ivey anywhere. The final book I want to talk about here is also something that is not out yet. It will be coming out in October. But the more Catherine Newman dips into the well of this family in the book Wreck, which was featured in her book Sandwich that came out last year, I just want to see her recognized for it even more. And the way she writes about this family, the inner workings of Rocky's mind, and how she cares for her family and worries about the passage of time, and in this case, worries about a potential medical diagnosis that might be coming. It's just beautiful and poignant. And she is focusing on a character, getting up there in middle-aged woman. And that's not a point of view you get a whole lot in fiction. Certainly not with the amount of raw, honest detail that Catherine Newman puts in. Although I'm saying it's raw and honest, but I have obviously never been a late middle-aged woman. But from women I know in the real world, it feels like it fits the experience. And from comments I've gotten from women who have read Sandwich, it seems to fit their reality. So this is another case where I just want good things for Catherine Newman, for bringing Rocky and her family to life, and for coming back to them for another visit. Because honestly, I would visit Rocky and her family every single year if Catherine Newman decided to publish a book about them every year. I'm that in on this. Well, 2 books is really a series, but I'm that in on these books. So those are the books that I think are either the biggest surprises or books that I would have liked to see get some recognition. I'd love to hear what you think would have been nice to see on the long list for the National Book Award for fiction. Or if you have thoughts about what might make the shortlist, whatever you want to do, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.